The doctor handed me a file, and in that second, my marriage stopped feeling real, not broken, not complicated, planned. Something in those pages wasn't just wrong, not medically, not legally, deliberately. That was the moment I understood this wasn't an accident. It was a trap designed to destroy my future, my reputation, and my child's life. But there was one thing he didn't calculate: who I am. This isn't a love story. This is the moment I stopped being his wife and became the woman who would expose everything he built on lies. And what I discovered next was so calculated, so cruel, that once you hear it, you'll understand why this story could only end one way. My name is Isabella Richardson. I am 31 years old and work as a senior lawyer at a law firm in Boston. My family has a fortune that has been mapped out and preserved for generations. But I chose my own path. I am proud of my career. 6 years ago, I met Mitchell at a gala event, one of those classic venues. Christopher was an investment advisor. Tall, with deep blue eyes, he spoke with careful thought. The day we met, he didn't question me much. He just laughed, said I was a good conversationalist, and didn't mention money at all. That was very appealing at the time. All the other men couldn't hide their curiosity about my wealth. Within the first 5 minutes, Christopher made all the difference, or so it seemed. We got married a year later. A small ceremony in Princeton Chapel during the empty month of March. Christopher's eyes welled up as he spoke. "I'm the luckiest man in the world to live with you," he said. When I looked into his eyes, I thought it was true. It was such a pure thought. The marriage was going well for the first 2 years. Christopher had long working hours, but that seemed normal. That's how the finance world is. He seemed obsessed with his phone, but I told myself it was just a job requirement. Urgent midnight meetings, extra appointments on weekends, it all felt normal. Then the 3rd year began and things started to change. Christopher started asking about my money. At first, very naive questions: what assets I'd allocated my retirement funds to, how sound my investments were, details about my real estate, planning for the future. He said, "I want to move our house to a better one." Our house was already a villa with 5 bedrooms, 4 bathrooms, and a pool, but I didn't criticize it. Then came the veiled comments about me not continuing to work. "Why are you tiring yourself out so much, Bella? You have enough money. Relax. You can take care of your husband, too. Just think about when you'll be pregnant." While preparing for the baby, Christopher told me to update the will. "Make you the primary beneficiary," he said, "on all of your accounts." It didn't seem strange at the time. Married couples do that. But now, sitting in Miranda's office, watching the doctor open a drawer, all those memories had taken on a different color. "Isabella," said Miranda, "last month, my sister started working as a genetic counselor at this hospital." Genetic counselor. I listened until I understood what she meant when she said Christopher had no birth defect. While going through his file, Miranda continued, "I found my husband's name. When he opened the door, a question popped into my head. The door. Why was he talking about the door? My husband's sister, Lily, has worked in several of this hospital's exterior departments," Miranda said, showing a photograph. It showed a young woman with red hair carrying patient files. "Lily came to me crying a week ago." I was listening, but I couldn't understand. Why was the doctor so curious about my husband? "Lily," Miranda said, 3 months ago. She said a patient's husband approached her. She met him outside of public buildings in a private place. He was well dressed. She said he was having problems. My hands started to get cold. "Our husband said he couldn't have children naturally," Miranda continued, "but his wife didn't know that. She wanted to bribe the clinic to change the records so that it would look like the baby was conceived naturally. It was as if she couldn't hear the period sound. Bribery, record alteration, presenting it as a natural pregnancy. Lily initially refused," Miranda said, "but then he offered $25,000 for her nurse's salary. That money was Lily's life, student loans, car loans. She couldn't take it. I supposed to do? Just sit there silently? I already knew whether Christopher was involved in this or not. I looked at the file. My husband's name was there. His signature was there." "Isabella," Miranda said, her eyes filled with tears, "as a person, I'm so sorry for you. and as a medical professional too. All this deceit in my system hurt you deeply, and I wanted you to know that before you went home. She opened the file. The original embryology report stated that Christopher's sperm count was very low, making natural pregnancy impossible. Then there was the altered report. It said we had used donor sperm, but that had been removed later. Natural pregnancy had been written in its place. Lily hid everything, Miranda said. The signatures, the payment records, even the accounting notes in her own calendar. Guilt was eating her alive. Christopher's sperm, I said. I couldn't finish the sentence. Your child isn't his child. Isabella, genetically, it's an IVF pregnancy using donor sperm. But the report was always altered to make it look like a natural pregnancy. There was one more step. I said to myself, if there were always plans like this, there was one more step. Will a DNA test be done? I asked. Miranda looked at me strangely. Why are you asking? Because, I said slowly. The whole apparatus was coming out against a brain trained as a lawyer. Christopher had already planned this. Miranda tensed up. If a DNA test is done, I continued, my voice flat, it will show that the child isn't his. Then he can accuse me of cheating. Is there a prenuptial agreement? Yes, Miranda said quietly. The infidelity clause. If you cheated, you owe him $600,000. The first time I encountered Christopher's plan, there was complete silence. The room was quiet, only the sounds of the hospital corridors and the patient monitors turning off their batteries were heard. Finally, we talked. Miranda gave me Lily's information, and I contacted Lily. She looked frail and guilty, but she spoke eloquently. She went on to detail Christopher's plan, IVF treatment with bribes, a successful pregnancy, pretending it was a natural pregnancy, accusing me of deceiving her with a DNA test, and then taking most of my inheritance through a prenuptial agreement. This is the first step in the system, said Lily, the first scam. Your first time? I asked. Yes, it was done with a woman for years ago as well, in Boston. I called my lawyer. Rebecca Steinberg is a divorce law specialist and experienced in fraud cases. I told her everything. I gave her the files. I told her she needed to take Lily's statement. Then she recommended that I hire a private investigator. Rosalind Webb is a former police detective. Rosalind's office. A loyal, stern look. Don't you want to ruin my husband? She said. No, I said, but I want to be able to defend myself after an attack. Within 10 days, Rosalind presented all the evidence. Christopher's credit card transactions, hotel rooms, and restaurants. Bank transfers to Lily, the embryologist, the man who provided the donor sperm, and furthermore, Christopher had been having an affair with his assistant for 6 months. There were photos, messages, everything. Then the case from 4 years ago was found. Isabella, a woman named Brennan, discovered financial irregularities in Christopher's prenuptial agreement before he signed it. She didn't sign the will, nor did she transfer any money. The relationship ended, and she hesitated to file a lawsuit. But now she was ready to speak out. Now my lawyer has gathered all the evidence. Lily gave her official statement. The embryologist said she would cooperate in exchange for a fine. The young man who provided the donor sperm, Derek Miller, has also been found. He received $20,000 from her, and he knew nothing about the fraud. The police sprang into action. Christopher's boss received a school sentence for embezzlement. $47,000 had been removed from the hospital's accounting records, all to fund this fraudulent scheme. My lawyer informed me an arrest warrant has been issued. The charges include fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. Now I had to make a decision. What would happen to our relationship? How would I think about my baby? Should I sue Christopher? My pregnancy was advanced, 32 weeks. My baby was healthy. The fact that his or her DNA didn't contain my husband's genes didn't change the baby's value. Should I give her the file? I asked Rebecca. You'll give a statement to the police, he said, but the decision to take Christopher to court is yours. But I, as a lawyer, knew one thing: justice means punishing a criminal. And Christopher had a plan to ruin me. Tonight, before the moment began, I smiled when Christopher came home. All day, I focused on the plan. Looking at the ultrasound report, remembering what Lily had said, reviewing the photos. Christopher hugged me. How is our baby doing? He said. Wonderful, I said. The doctor said he's seen the healthiest baby. Her eyes welled up with tears as she listened to me. Fake tears. A beautiful actress. I realized she'd embarked on a whole strategy, portraying herself as the savior, betrayed by her selfish wife. I can never offer you more consolation than what you've done for me, Christopher said. The spring weather was lovely. Our garden was in bloom. A good time for a transition. But now, because I understood the whole plan, I had the strength and determination. The following week, I extended a special invitation to Christopher. Initially believing everything is normal is a form of self-protection. Because when an established order is disrupted, not only the facts but also the sense of security is shaken. The mind prefers to take its time rather than immediately accept what has happened. This delay is not a weakness, but the soul's attempt to recover. Deep down, one feels that something is wrong, but this feeling is suppressed for a long time. As the questions grow, the silence grows heavier. As the silence grows heavier, one is left alone with one's own thoughts. It is at this point that awareness silently knocks on the door. Now, it is necessary to look forward, not backward. Because when the truth is seen, it is impossible to ignore it. I invited Christopher to a party at my grandmother's historic mansion. In the middle of spring, when the gardens were in full bloom, his family would be there, his friends, his colleagues, everyone. A potted plant scene would be set up for Christopher's big moment. But the scene wouldn't go as he had planned. As he prepared for the party, Christopher checked his face in the mirror. The veiled pleasure of appropriate behavior, the mask of the anxious husband. 3 years of acting lessons were fully completed. Now, he was ready to play the role of the man caught by his unfaithful wife. "What are we going to do at the party?" he asked. "It's a surprise," I said, smiling. "Just come and have fun." He didn't know it, but he'd installed security cameras at home. Yes, to keep his own plan a secret. But I'd also had every minute recorded under the direction of my lawyer. I needed proof. In a criminal case, everything is recorded. When we arrived at the party, the garden looked wonderful. 60 guests, white tables, an outdoor bar, classical music. Christopher's family was there, his mother Linda, his father Robert. Robert's face was beaming with pride. His son was a successful financial advisor, a handsome hostess, and had easily married a wealthy woman. None of them knew that their son's life would be shattered within 48 hours. Around 3 o'clock, Christopher pulled me aside. "Tell me you need to do something," he said in a very affectionate voice. "I know," I said. "DNA test." His eyes narrowed. For the first time, he looked surprised. "Yes, Christopher, I'm listening. For months and months you've been talking about wanting to prove the child's identity. Proof of paternity, you say. I want to know if the child has pure Wilson blood." "Bella, calm down," I said, smiling at everyone at the party. "Now is the time." The crowd fell silent. About 60 people on the grass stared at us. Christopher's face began to sweat. I held the microphone. The words weren't very well prepared, according to my lawyer. It needed to be a warm, heartfelt speech. But I remained disciplined. "Thank you, everyone," I said, "for being here, for celebrating our joy. But today, there's something else I want to celebrate. The truth." Christopher's face turned gray. "Last month, during a routine ultrasound appointment, my doctor showed me a file. The file changed everything I thought I knew about marriage." The crowd was silent. There was only the garden breeze. "My husband has an infertility problem. It's a serious problem. He won't be able to have children naturally. This has been medically proven." Linda, Christopher's mother, looked surprised. Robert turned his head away. "But my husband handled this situation without me knowing. He bribed people working at the clinic. He gave $25,000 to a nurse, Lily Summers gave it, to alter the sperm sample." The crowd is rustling. The rustling started. Phones were drawn. People started taking pictures. "Donor sperm was used," I continued. "But the report presented it as a natural pregnancy." "Why?" "Because my wife had a plan." Christopher tried to stand up. "Bella, this is ridiculous. Pregnancy hormones. Do you have any?" I asked, his voice cold. "The paper files, the original embryology reports, the altered reports, the payment records." Lily's view shown in the middle of the video on the big screen in the garden. "My husband," I said bluntly, "wanted a DNA test after the birth. The results would show he wasn't the biological father. Then he would accuse me of cheating. We have a prenuptial agreement, a clause against infidelity. I would owe him $600,000. I would lose my inheritance rights." "This is a very well-planned scam," I said, raising my voice. Someone in the crowd said something in support of Christopher, but most remained silent. They were all looking at the papers, examining the pictures. The phones were recording. But wait, there's something else, I said. I showed them a series of photographs. Christopher and his assistant, Morgan Phillips. Hotel rooms, restaurants, romantic dinners. A woman he'd been seeing for 6 months. Christopher's mother screamed. Her face turned pale. Robert got up and turned his head away. And here's the thing, I said. 4 years ago, Isabella in Boston, another woman named Brennan. Christopher tried to do the same thing to her. Financial fraud, financial irregularities. But Isabella refused to get her money back. But now she wants to be a witness. The crowd erupted. Conversations, phone calls, loud noises. Finally, I said, Christopher's business has a missing $47,000 money stolen from customer accounts to finance bribery and fraud. Christopher's boss, Martin, was sitting there. He had also been invited to the party. His face turned red. Right now, I said, the police will be here. Christopher stood up and tried to run away, but there were 2 police officers at the door leading to the backyard. Calm, professional. Christopher Mitchell said, the first one, you are under arrest on charges of fraud, conspiracy, and embezzlement. Christopher shouted, Bella is crazy. Pregnancy has ruined her. No doctor. Miranda Foster is here. Ready, I said, pointing to the doctor. She has all the records. The young man who provided the donor sperm, Derek Miller, is ready, I said. He'll tell you why he took the $20,000. Lily Summers, the nurse, gave an official statement. Embryologist Dr. Robert Chen cooperated in exchange for a fine. With each name spoken, Christopher's face fell a little more. The reality hit him. I wasn't talking about the game. He was literally handcuffed. Him overcome his limitations. I watched him crumble under the weight of his family. His mother was sobbing. His father wouldn't look at his son's face. He just stared at the ground, frozen in place. Christopher's assistant, Morgan, who had also been invited to the party, tried to get away from the police car, but she was also under investigation. When she ended the relationship, she resigned from the company, but that wasn't enough. She would be questioned because of her connection to the financial documents. The police took him to his car. His own investigation was about to begin. The crowd was stunned, deeply choked with emotion. What they witnessed, a success story, suddenly transformed into a crime. My lawyer, Rebecca, stood beside me. Good job, she said. The evidence is excellent. The case will be easy. Christopher's father, Robert, approached us. His face was a terrible sight. He looked as if he had aged 20 years. Isabella, he said, I'm so sorry. Your son. We didn't realize how cruel people could be. You're not all to blame for this, I said in a soft but firm voice. But mistakes demand accountability. Yes, said Robert. Absolutely yes. After the party, as we were walking through the garden, among the flowers, my mother found me. I'm so proud of you, he said. Thank you, I said. But this was difficult. This isn't the end of the problems. It's the beginning, my mother said. Divorce is coming, arrests, court, but you had the strength. It was true. The divorce was finalized in record time. Christopher's lawyer tried to negotiate, but there was nothing to say. The prenuptial agreement, the infidelity clause, worked in my favor. He cheated, not the other way around. He planned it, I didn't. Christopher's financial claims were all denied. Every asset he claimed to own was either borrowed, stolen, or fictitious. The criminal case progressed quickly. Lily gave official testimony and then took a consulting position on the program at another hospital. Guilt consumed her, but she wanted a fresh start. The embryologist fully cooperated in exchange for a reduced sentence. He lost his administrative license but avoided imprisonment. Derek Miller finished his master's degree and got a good job. He was furious when he found out he was involved in the fraud. But I told him he wasn't an accomplice, he was the one being scammed. He thanked me. Christopher's boss, Martin, exposed the embezzlement. The company launched a federal investigation. The probability of conviction was very high. In the courtroom, Christopher looked at me. There was something strange in his eyes, no frustration, no anger, just defeat. Why? He asked. Because, I said, as a lawyer I know, justice is not the case, and I had to defend myself against what you were planning. The judge handed down 8 years for fraud, 5 years for conspiracy, and 3 years for embezzlement. Total, potentially 16 years. He would not be open to plea bargaining. Christopher was taken prisoner. As I moved away from the cameras, a police officer asked me, "Do you miss your wife?" "No," I said, "but I'm getting ready." My baby was born 6 weeks later. A girl, Sophia, healthy, perfect. in no way affected by Christopher's genetic heritage. The moment I first saw her, I knew this child was mine. What is genetics? What is a DNA test? She was my daughter because I chose her, protected her, and loved her. The birth certificate, Christopher's name wasn't on it. Legally, he wasn't recognized as the child's father. Because we didn't do a newborn test, there's no biological link document. But I knew Sophia is me. Christopher, while in prison, was aware of all this time. He sent letters, apologies, expressions of guilt, messages reflecting on his 16 years in prison. I ignored them all. I stayed very close to my mother. For 2 years, we hardly spoke because Christopher kept her at a distance. But now, we have lunch together every week. Sophia loves her grandmother, and my mother is moved by her granddaughter's smile. He never said, "I told you so." I said one day. My mother smiled because I had already begun that supervision. Watching you rebuild yourself with your own strength is far more satisfying. A year later, I received a new job offer. A partner at a women's law firm. Marital crises, fraud defense. My personal experience became a tool. Sophia grew up. I would have to explain all of this. One day she would ask, "Who is my father?" I'll say, "He's a scientist. He wasn't a very good man, but he helped me give you away. Now, you're mine. Completely mine." Christopher is still in prison. His sentence was reduced from 16 years for good behavior, but he still had 12 years left. According to prison records, he took student classes, worked as a counselor, and saw through the wrongdoings of his own men. But it didn't matter to me anymore. My grandmother's mansion, the place where all this drama unfolded, was now Sophia and my home. The garden still bloomed beautifully. My mother helps me raise my child. The wisdom of the older generation blends with the practicality of a modern mother. One morning, I was sitting by the window with Sophia, watching the flowers. My grandmother's garden design. The flowers my mother had planted. The new orchids I had planted. Generations, growth, security. All Christopher did was he helped to understand it. Light streams in through the window. Sophia is smiling. My mother is preparing breakfast in the kitchen. And for the first time, I feel completely safe at home. As time progresses, it becomes clear that what happened was more than just a disappointment. It transforms into an experience that fundamentally changes one's perspective on life. The concept of trust is redefined. Boundaries are redrawn. Things are no longer accepted as easily as before. Instead of suppressing their emotions, they learn to make sense of them. Inner maturity develops during this process. Vulnerability gives way to cautious strength. Every step is taken more consciously. The weight of the past is not erased, but it ceases to be a burden that controls the individual. Thus, what happened transforms from a destructive experience into a process of transformation. Sophia was 5 years old. She asked me at the dinner table with a very serious face, "Mom, why doesn't my dad ever come to visit me?" My heart was broken. I repeated the answers I had prepared. "He's in jail for doing some bad things to your father, but it's not your fault. None of this has anything to do with you." But that 5-year-old brain didn't quite grasp the word prison. "Is he in prison?" he asked. "Is he a bad guy? He made some wrong choices," I said softly. "But who he is isn't about you. Who you are is about you." Sophia smiled a childlike smile, not yet broken by such terrible things. "Okay, Mommy," she said, "but I want to be your dad. What about me?" I asked, smiling sweetly. "It's me," he said simply, "the one playing with you." The wisdom of children. They don't have DNA tests. Life follows what it can't test. Christopher got a reduced sentence. He had 9 years left. I received the letter one day. It was a frantic piece of writing, pages and pages of apologies and self-analysis. He mentioned Sophia wanting to see a child, wanting to make amends, etc. None of it moved me. I kept the letters in a paper bag, but I stopped reading them. That's in the past. 2 years later, when Sophia was 7 years old, I met someone new. Ethan Price was an insider in my proof-making case. Initially, I didn't pay any attention to data analysts, an accountant, a dry businessman. But in court, when our eyes met, something happened. Holding the papers, there was something in his eyes that supported me. A simple smile, but a genuine one. At the end of the trial, he approached me and asked, "Could I have a cup of coffee with you?" That, I said, Yes. The coffee lasted for a few weeks. Then dinner. Then he met Sophia in the park when I introduced them. Ethan shook Sophia's hand very seriously. I'm so glad to meet you, he said to Sophia. My mother talked a lot about you. Sophia asked curiously. She's very smart, very strong, very beautiful, said Ethan. Sophia's face turned bright red, but she liked it. Ethan never criticized Christopher. He never judged his past. He was just there. He played games for Sophia, talked to me about stressful days at work, insisted on mentioning the baked cake. 6 months later, Ethan pulled me aside. In the garden, near the rose bushes, the rose that had been part of my grandmother's inheritance. Isabella, she said, I want to ask you a question, but I need Sophia's permission. I burst out laughing. Sophia's permission? Yes, because I love both of them. That night, while Sophia was asleep, Ethan asked her, would it be all right for you if Mom and I lived together? Sophia thought about it for a long time. Can we have pajama parties? She asked. Every week, said Ethan. Okay, said Sophia, but you have to buy me a bicycle. Ethan laughed and shook his head. At a certain point, people begin not only to understand what has happened, but also to accept it. Acceptance is not about approving of what happened. It's about ceasing to deny it. This difference emerges very subtly, but its impact is significant. The mind no longer dwells on the past, but turns to thinking about the future. The wedding took place 2 years later. He didn't come here, just at my grandmother's mansion, with my mother, Ethan's family, Sophia, and no police officers. Christopher sent a letter of congratulations, a real letter, a letter of well wishes. I read it and put it down. Sophia became the flower girl. Ethan didn't play the role of her father. He never used that word. He was just Ethan, but Sophia called him more than father. When she said, my Ethan, it was heartbreaking, heart-wrenching. Christopher is out of jail. After 9 years, a 19-year-old man emerges as 50. The media is glossing over the whole story, the billionaire woman, the crooked husband. They informed me that Christopher needs advice on what to do as a lawyer if he calls Ethan. Should he call Sophia? I said, highly unlikely, my lawyer said. No legal identification, no DNA test. All he has are letters and an apology. Christopher called. When I answered the phone, I spoke to my lawyer. The conversation was recorded. We needed to keep a recording. Isabella, said Christopher, his voice old, broken, almost unrecognizable. I need to apologize. Christopher, 9 years, she said. 9 years and 1 day. Every day I thought about you. Every day I thought how stupid, how awful I was. I remained silent. Can I see Sophia? He asked. No, I said simply. Never, just once. No, I said, Christopher, Sophia isn't your child. Legally, genetically, in no way. You didn't choose her. When you did that, you disrupted the selection process. Now she has another father, Ethan. He chose her. Isabella, please. It's over, I said. I hung up the phone. My lawyer looked at me. You did well, he said. Christopher never called again. The news reported that after he got out of prison, there were a lot of media traps. Rebuilding, becoming an expert, sharing his guilt, all things he shouldn't have done. But he quietly went on. He moved to Boston, a normal environment, a middle-class apartment, a consulting job. My life went on. Ethan needed legal advice, Christopher's, in the Istakra efforts. She thanked me profusely for not involving Sophia. It's your responsibility to protect Sophia, he said. Absolutely. I said. 5 years later, Ethan and I had a second child, a boy, Miles. Sophia became a big sister. Miles was Ethan's biological child, but to Sophia, he was just her brother. Families are beyond their structures, beyond genetics, beyond choice and everyday love. My mother was 90 years old. She was still giving legal advice, still tending to the garden. Sophia called her Nane. Ethan called her Susan. I called her Anne. It was all true. My grandmother's mansion, that place has seen all these years. The party, Christopher, the arrest, Ethan, Sophia growing up, Miles' birth. The gardens had seen 5 generations of women. The rose bushes held all our stories. Sophia was 9 years old. She said she wanted to be a historian. Mommy, I am going to write the story of our families, she said. Which story? I asked. All of them, he said. Yours, Nane's, Ethan's, Miles, even Christopher's, the whole story. Because no character is black and white. Everyone is mixed. I thought she would become a lawyer, but perhaps a historian would be better. Christopher committed crimes again 2 years later. Minor offenses, telling huge lies, a consultant stealing client money. In the investigation, how many questions did the lawyers ask me? Are you surprised that he's having problems again? No, I said simply, years in prison, childhood trauma, narcissistic personality disorder. Those kinds of people don't change. They just learn to lie better. It will go through the court again, I said, but this time I won't be handling the defense. Christopher received an additional 4-year prison sentence at his second trial. In total, he would spend 13 years in prison. My practice, meanwhile, was flourishing. I specialize in fraud cases. Many women, upon hearing of my experience, came to me. My story empowered them. My husband stole my money. He accuses me of cheating. He's trying to take all my inheritance. I was listening. I was gathering evidence. I was turning the scam right over his head. Some lawyers heard me and asked, "How can you feel so cold? You must have your own personal trauma." Exactly, I said. That's why I'm affected. My empathy is balanced by my coldness. Trauma, power. Ethan asked me, has Christopher ever been forgiven? There was a long silence. Forgiveness, I said, depends on the person, but the compensation, losing his child, his inheritance, his reputation, he has to bear it. And he did. Then he committed another crime and was punished again. What is the end result? Justice, restraint, then rehabilitation again. What about an apology? Said Ethan. An apology requires action, I said. There was no action here, only words and letters. Christopher's words are painful to mention, but offer no solution. Acknowledgement, but no change. Ethan was silent. You know this, I said. You know it as a lawyer. In the court system, compensation is established through legal means, not emotional forgiveness. Yes, said Ethan, but you? I thought to myself, personally, I let go of him, but I didn't let go of my child's positioning in his life. I didn't let go of my husband's identity. I maintained the legal and detailed perspective. This is justice. Ethan nodded. He understood. Broken trust is rebuilt first within oneself, not in others. Listening to one's own feelings opens the door to the greatest change. Over time, fear gives way to cautious courage. One learns to release what one cannot control. Thus, experiences cease to be a burden and become a source of awareness. Sophia was 15. She did a school project. Fraud, lies within the family structure. She researched my story. Christopher's, the court case, and the outcome. I considered allowing her to do it for her school. Yes, I said, because historians are the ones who tell the truth. Sophia presented the project. The class was shocked. The teacher told me Sophia spoke very maturely. She was pained, but she carried self-awareness. Sophia then asked me, "Mom, is Christopher still my dad?" "No," I said. "He's your genetic father. But fatherhood is a matter of choice. He didn't choose you. Did Ethan choose?" "Yes," I said, "every day." Sophia seemed to have been able to process it. When Miles was 10 years old, he was playing soccer with Ethan. I watched from the window. He wasn't Ethan's child yet. He was a family child. 15 years later after, it all began. My grandmother's estate has thrived for generations. Ethan's parents came to see Sophia choose her university, Cambridge, history. Miles was considering medical school. My mother, 95, and still simple. Christopher would serve 9 more years in prison. Perhaps he would be 65 when he got out. Who knows what will happen? For me, it was a winding road. As a lawyer, powerful. As a wife, happy. As a mother, proud. Justice, in my opinion, wasn't just about the case. It was about living real life, loving, raising, moving forward. One morning, my mother and I were sitting by the tea house watching the garden. The roses were still in bloom. The hydrangeas planted by my mother were still healthy. The lavender border from my childhood was still purple. "Do you regret it?" my mother asked. "All this lawsuit, all this media, all this tension?" "I think no," I said finally, "because Christopher chose. He chose fraud. He chose lies. I chose justice. I chose Sophia. I chose Ethan. These are my choices. Gardens give rise to people, but people, we have gathered what we plant. Christopher, for example, planted rotten seeds. He harvested them. I planted flowers, love, justice, strength. I gathered them. And after all these years, Isabella Richardson, lawyer, woman, mother, survivor, I was happy. Exactly, a deep, genuine happiness that starts each day. This story shows that what happened wasn't just a turning point. but also the beginning of a powerful awakening. Sometimes, people experience the greatest change by navigating through the quietest pain. Facing the truth, however difficult, can lead a person to a more conscious, more mindful, and more resilient state. The past is gone, but its lessons illuminate the path to the future. Experiences don't diminish a person's worth. On the contrary, they reveal their own strength. Every experience teaches us to draw clearer boundaries and take greater ownership of ourselves. This closure is not an end, but a stop that opens the door to a more conscious life. A person is shaped not by what happens to them, but by how they respond to it. And sometimes the greatest strength lies in quietly getting up and moving on.